Okay, so we're going to move from a story that it's not the greatest story in the world, but it's a necessary story. And I'm talking about the WGA uh, strike, possible strike. So there's been a lot of talk about writers and how um, what this could do. Um, I was in the streams recently because thank you very much. Thank you very much. And I'm glad to have you back. So, you know, I'm glad you enjoyed them. And don't forget, I was just saying at the top of the show that I have a Mission Impossible rewatch stream coming up very shortly too. So, do you think we're going to see an Endgame type of world with Mario? Now, do you mean like developing that type of thing, or do you mean like like a link? Yeah, I could very easily see that. Yeah, absolutely, 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 because they have a hit on their hands now. They know that. Now, we'll be interested. So you're gonna. The one thing I'll say is this before we move on. The the one thing I'll say is this. I think that in order to really get the um, the people back, you're going to have to figure out a way to incorporate the other core characters, right? Um, so imagine all the movies lead up to Smash Brothers. Yeah, they listen. They could very easily do that. So I'm sure right now at Universal they're planning this stuff out, and what can we do and how can we do it to capitalize on this. Now, I'm not saying you have to have Mario's and everything. If you look, I'll say this: if you could take that core concept of Mario and apply it to, let's say, The Last of Us. What I mean by that is putting little Easter eggs in there, okay, and doing that. Then in all the other upcoming films, you absolutely could do that. I have no doubt in my mind. They would probably need to make all the movies. Yes, no, absolutely. You're absolutely right. They have to make all those in the same fashion because that's what people are. Look, you could go out and make a Princess Peach movie right now and develop that and have that done in a couple of years. Um, I've heard whispers of a Zelda movie. Yeah, definitely, definitely. I have no doubt in my mind. So, I mean, you could legitimately right now today make a Princess Peach movie, a Zelda movie, and something else, and it would still resonate and all lead up to something like that. Absolutely. Um, Captain Toad, yeah. I'm sure they're brainstorming all of this stuff right now. So we'll see. So we'll see about all that stuff. But one thing I actually wanted to touch upon was the, as I said, the Writers Guild of America, because without these fantastic, we're all getting the fruits of all the labors of all these writers, and even if it's animated, I mean, because you have these writers that write this, and whether it's Chris Pratt coming in or whoever it is doing the voice, and so the writers are the most integral portions of all of this, because without good writing, you're not having good movies. And so um, I want to talk about how this could impact um, the movies and how it really could do some damage. So here is a piece that Deadline wrote. Now, it's quite long. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I do want to read a couple of them, a couple of paragraphs, just to get to show you why it's important and how likely it could be happening. In a week, when distributors and exhibitors reconvene for their annual Las Vegas Meetup CinemaCon and celebrate the post-pandemic resurge of the box office, the motion picture industry is also bracing for a potential Writers Guild of America strike. With production and deal-making slowing down, especially with 98% of WG West and WG East authorizing a strike, if it's a fair new film television deal isn't met by the May 1st deadline, so it's next week, how how could it possibly make a dent in the box office boom? One Gouder analyst projects would result in an estimated $32 billion globally, up 24% from last year, and $9 billion stateside, up 200%. Just the majority of the exhibitors are getting back on their feet financially after COVID's great shutdown of 2020 and 2021. Studio sources outlining the worst case scenarios to deadline should the WGA strike span more than 4 months. In short, the theatrical release calendar would see several date changes for picks as soon as Q4, quarter four this year. While the 2024 theatrical release calendar remains roughly intact in its first 6 months, with completed movies coming down the pipeline, beyond that it gets squishy. It's in a scenario that might lead studios to pull their Q4 2023 films. Such an aftermath from a possible strike isn't as dramatic as it would be for television production, which you would feel more immediate. Realize the longest WGA strike on record was in 1988, when it lasted 6 months, 153 days, followed by the 1960 strike of 146 days, and then, of course, 07 and 08, and that lasted 100 days. There's another wrinkle. With SAG and AFTRA's contract expiring next week, June 30th, should that union decide to strike, it would prevent actors from doing publicity on featured shows or television projects. So how does that jolt summer's later tentpoles, i.e. Mission Impossible, Dead Reckoning, Oppenheimer, Barbie, Haunted Mansion, amongst others? The good news is that exhibitors that release tentpoles are prized launch pads for movie studios, so they're not apt to give up them easily. Hence, there's no move for those dates or distributions, and it's a wait-and-see mode. On the other hand, the similar movies that are publicity dependent are primed to pivot should AFTRA and SAG strike. This past weekend, the National Board voted unanimously to approve a resolution, quote, strongly in support, end quote, of WGA and their ongoing talks. So this is quite a long article. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but what I will say is this. It's incredibly, incredibly important. So, yes, I remember the 070 was the reason Lost took such a downward and for Heroes. Yeah, Heroes was a major part of that too. But nonetheless, it's one of those things where, look, if we have this strike, because don't forget, this is how reality television came into play all those years ago. I mean, we have shows like Survivor and Fear Factor and everything because it was completely unscripted. And when they got back, when the writers got back, they started to become mainstays. They started to become popular. All that stuff being said, this could be devastating for not only Screen Actors Guild, as I made mention, but the writers, and they just want fair wages and everything else. And look, I'm all in support of them. I hope this doesn't affect it, but you got to understand something too, that these are always, it's a business, okay? It's a push and a pull type of thing. And the thing is that you get people that don't want to do something, they'll just sit out and they'll wait. And that's the beauty about a union, right? Is that they all come together and they all do what they're supposed to do. I hope there is no strike because I wouldn't want to see this. All these movies have been delayed for so long. People are really going to, be like, we don't want them delayed anymore. I just hope they get done. But this is the reason I talk about this stuff. While the Disney stuff and the Super Mario stuff is cool too, it's because this is part of the business. There are writers. I mean, we watch the credits of a movie and it says written by. We just see a name, but that's an actual person. Okay, they make a living doing this. Okay, and if some of these things are taken away from them, or they're not getting paid enough, or the residuals aren't there, that's a whole thing with AI. How much is AI going to affect the writer's strike too? There's a lot of different dynamics. So It's not the sexiest thing in the world, I know, but it is important because otherwise, you know, it affects streaming too. It's not just feature films. It's streaming. It's television. It's streaming, and it's major motion pictures. What do you guys think? Do you guys think that they're going to strike? If they do, how long do you think the strike's going to be? What film would you hope doesn't get delayed? Because they said that it could be some of them could be delayed later on in this year. Let me know the thoughts down in the comments, and I'll get back to everybody.